So, you say you want to have a race war. Now, you have, let's say at most, you have 100,000 people who are with you. Do you really think 100,000 people will put up that big of a fight against the most powerful military on the planet? Of which quite a few are black people in the military who have taken an oath. I mean, what type of war do you plan to wage? What type of race war? And, I'm curious to know who's going to, what general is going to map out the plan for this so-called race war, and how are you going to get the troops together? How will you know who the enemy really is? Because again, a lot of the military are black. So are you going to fight against them? Who are you really going to fight against? I mean, I'm just curious to know, because I hear people, anytime I hear somebody say who's black say something about a race war, I'm a bit puzzled, because I'm trying to figure out where you're going to get the weapons from. What weapons are you going to use? Okay, you got an AR-15. You got a 9mm. Let's just say you have some rifles and some pistols. I mean, can you bring down a tank with that? Or a jet? I mean, it's just stupid for a person to really talk about some type of race war when you don't have anything to fight with. It's like me having some rocks and sticks and another person having grenades. And I'm saying that, I plan to go to war with you. Does that really make sense? And besides, think about it for a minute. If you were to go to war and you had 100,000 people, I mean, it would probably last maybe a couple of hours, and you'd be wiped out. And then you could say, well, I died fighting. Now, who do you think is going to really care? Because if you have children, they'll be abandoned, so to speak. They'll be orphans. Now, did you make arrangements for somebody to take care of them in case you decide to participate in this so-called race war? Or is it that it's your ego and you're saying, well, I'm not going to let them run over me. We're going to have a race war. Come on, people. Stop with that foolishness. And anybody who comes up telling you about a race war, ask them who's going to financially support it. Where are they going to get the weapons from? What type of weapons are you going to fight with? Sticks and bricks? Against a tank? Come on. You see one of those Abrams tanks coming down your street, and you're going to get out and start shooting a 9mm and AR-15. Doesn't make sense. So, forget about this thing about this so-called race war. I mean, it's pointless. And there was this young lady who made the statement when I said that there is no such thing as 100% black American. And there's not, because we all have some European ancestry, whether we like it or not. So if you have 60% of African ancestry, are you more black than a person who has 5% of black ancestry? Or would a person with 5% of black ancestry be considered biracial or multiracial? Because just look around. We had a president who was biracial, but yet we called him black, didn't we? And I know some people like to use that term African American. There's no such thing as an African American. Unless you were from Africa and you came here and became a naturalized citizen. But this so-called African American, how can you be, majority of black people have no idea which direction Africa is. And don't have any plans on ever visiting Africa. Majority of black people in America. You told them, say, come on, let's go to Africa. I've been to Africa many, many times. For many, many years. And I remember when I first went, I was on the plane. I didn't see any other black Americans on that plane. I saw a lot of whites. In fact, I would say 90% of the plane was filled with whites and a few Asians and other Africans. That was it. But what is it that makes a person feel as though they can consider themselves as being black? I mean, if it's a color thing, come on. You have those who don't even look black, yet they call themselves black, right? So would you just say, no, they're not black because they're of a lighter shade of black? You know, the truth is, we're all mixed up. When you pull that ancestry and you look at your heritage and your makeup, your DNA, you're going to find some African, you're going to find some Caucasian. So what does that mean? Because it puzzles me, it baffles me when we say, well, we're African. So we're going to go to Africa and we're going to find out our heritage. But you forget about that small percentage of European in you. You mean to tell me you're not curious about that too? Irish or British or Portuguese, Spanish, German, whatever the case may be. French. You know, whatever the case may be, I mean, you should be interested in your whole makeup, not just part of it. So, and that's another thing. A lot of people making these videos about descendants of slaves. DOS, so it is what they call it. Now, I'm just wondering, have they ever been to Africa to actually see the real slave force that they have there, experience that? Because they have them all along the coastlines of Africa. I've been to a lot of them. But how many have actually been there so they actually know what took place during slavery? And see, another thing is that, people talking about U.S. government owe them money. Reparations. You hear that? Reparations. Who's going to pay it? America or the Africans who sold you? Because, think about it for just, let's think logically. A group of Europeans travels to a country. They don't know the terrain. They don't know the people. But yet they captured blacks, Africans, and enslaved them. Now think about that for just a minute. Does that make sense to you? Or would it make more sense that the rulers of Africa captured the slaves themselves and traded them for trinkets, whiskey, guns, and other products? Because who helped build those slave forts over there? Africans did. You think they did it for free? No, they didn't. They didn't go over there and say, well, look, we want you all to build these slave forts, or castles, as they call them, and we want you to do it for free. Of course, they didn't do it for free. So that's just my little take on this whole slavery thing. And, and another thing, we, as black people, we need to stop using slavery as, I don't want to call it a crutch, but we need to stop using it so much. Because, like I said, for the most part, none of us have ever seen a slave. Well, we've heard talk about it. Of course, we've read about it. So we know that slavery exists. But at some point, we have to say, okay, we know that that's part of our history. But now let's build on that. Let's not use it as a crutch. Let's not use it as an excuse, but let's use it as a stepping stone, so to speak. And that's not, I don't mean that in any type of derogatory way, but let's use that as a foundation to build on. And I think each year as you progress, then you don't tend to rely on the slavery quotient of your existence. So one thing I think that we should, as a people, saying black people, should do is, if you want to emulate somebody, think about it for a minute. Even the Africans in Africa. There are countries in Africa that could be world-class countries if it were not for the corruption. Of course, we know that exists. But beyond the corruption, you have a large group of highly educated people in every country in Africa. And it's difficult to get so many well-educated people to agree on something. If they were able to adapt certain other systems and forms of running a business, they would, and governments, they would leap over a lot of these other countries.